approached a friend and she's like, listen, one of my other friends, she's just starting off at Uber. She's like employee number 3. I met her in that meeting. The purpose of the meeting was to coach her to leave Uber. So I met with her. I told her the idea. She's like, how about you park it aside for now? 3 days later, I got an offer. And I was also one of the first early employees at Uber.
She ended up poaching you.
She ended up poaching me in the meeting, exactly.
At Morgan Stanley, and then you moved to Uber, and now you did Washmen.
Morgan Stanley, then Shoecare, then Uber.
Your company got named the #1 globally most innovative laundry company. What is it that you do behind the scenes that let you stay ahead of the curve?
The road in entrepreneurship is quite difficult. It's quite challenging, and you're always going to be under a lot of stress, whether it's financially or the unknowns that you don't know how it's going to play out.
What was the biggest failure you had?
There was another startup called Laundry Box that was doing it, but I thought I could do it in a much better way.
Today, we're excited to welcome Rami Shaar to the show, the visionary co-founder and CEO of Washmen. From a career in investment banking to building one of the most innovative app-based laundry services in the world, Rami has redefined convenience and quality. With a passion for disruption and bold decision-making, he's transformed a mundane chore into a global success story. Get ready to hear how Rami's leadership and innovation continue to inspire a new generation of entrepreneurs.
So what does an investment banker, an Uber insider, and the CEO of one of the most innovative laundry services have in common? Rami Shaar. Just one man, Rami Shaar. Welcome to the show.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to have you with us.
We have another man, Jad, but he's not here, so it's 2 of us.
All right. Well, we wish Jad was here. Thank you for joining us and sharing your story. Take us back, Rami, to your childhood. Was there anything that happened that made you think that, yes, I one day want to be an entrepreneur?
Okay, very good question that, you start that early. Haven't been asked that, but I think it's, growing up, call it in a middle class family. We grew up in the region here. My father was very focused on education and, having a strong foundation. He's a refugee from the Palestinian. I grew with my father, and I saw I was quite motivated by that. There was a lot of also talks with my father. Let's say we go have a burger at back in the day it was Fuddruckers in Saudi, and we would sit down and look at how many people are in the shop. We would value the business together. How many burgers are here, how many burgers per hour, weekends, seasonalities, all of that kind of stuff. And then we start playing this game. And that game, I think, would have started maybe at the age of as early as 13.
Wow, that's so
interesting. And we do it till today, right? So
you walk into a place and you start putting things together to value it.
Exactly. So doing the assumptions, you're basically doing financial modeling. Father impact was, I would say, the biggest thing on me. And I'm also the eldest son in the family. So when I went to university, I didn't really know exactly, which route am I going to take? How do you prepare for entrepreneurship? So I wanted to follow my dad's kind of like footsteps. So initially he's like, I'm a computer engineer. I should be doing computer science. I did that. I didn't really like it in the first year. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to do something without my family influence, right? So I decided to do finance. And then I think that was a good entry point because up until today, whatever I learned in university really applies operationally in the business, as well as fundraising and exit
from a finance point of view.
From a finance point of view, exactly. And I worked in investment banking. I was at Morgan Stanley, started in Saudi, moved to Dubai, and was doing investment banking advisory work, right? Where the advice that you're giving your clients ends when the transaction is completed, as opposed to seeing, how that advice creates value. And I was more interested in the value. So I decided to join a private equity, consumer focused, which is
in Dubai.
Dubai,
okay.
Yeah, consumer focused. They're a Middle East MENA fund, and Shoecare. And in that 1 year, I learned quite a bit about instead of becoming, let's say, a consultant, you're becoming more of an investor.
A private equity investor versus a consultant for an investment bank.
Exactly.
And the private equity investor, what was the difference that you were doing there?
So the work was less so, if you look at what you do as an analyst in investment bank, you're sitting down, working crazy hours, trying to put proposals together, doing these presentations. And then obviously your work gets handed over to more senior people, which they start putting a bit more, let's say, valuable work with the discussion with the clients and all of that. So it was quite tiresome. I felt like I was really a workhorse, wasn't really thinking about what am I really doing. I was just racing against the clock and the deadlines. But when I went to private equity, it was a bit more chill in the job. It allowed me to take a step back. Presentations and that kind of pressure of being an analyst wasn't really important. I would sit down with one of the executive directors, Mehdi. He was a great mentor. And what was unique about his relationship with me is we would spend hours in his office talking about the deals. Brainstorming the deals.
Was he
thinking
like your
an
manager,
entrepreneur.
or like a senior manager?
There wasn't really, analysts and associates and VPs. I was really working directly as the most junior person with the executive director directly. So
amazing opportunity to learn.
Absolutely. And in 1 year, I learned so much, the way, thinking about businesses, meeting entrepreneurs, getting their, understanding their vision, trying to see is their vision something that makes sense? Are they being too bullish? What's their incentives?
So I just want to take a step back and clarify for someone that might have a question on what is the difference between private equity and the startup in terms of the stage of the business?
So private equity investments, basically, just bringing it down to simple forms, it's a couple of managers who get their money from what they call limited partners, which are silent investors into the capabilities of these managers to be able to find opportunities in the private markets, businesses that are not public or trading or whatever. And there's usually a size, call it $50 million plus valuation businesses. So you give, let's say, the manager goes, meets all these $50 million plus businesses. And these businesses usually require one of two things, right? Either they're looking for an exit, right? They want to do a partial exit, or they have certain investors that want to exit, and you're coming in and being that new partner. Or no, our partners want to stay and we want to fuel the growth, which they call growth capital. It's similar to VCs in that aspect, but it's a bit more towards more mature businesses where it's not really a pre-revenue or a product to market fit kind of.
It's a $50 million running business.
It's a $50 million running business, usually cash flow generating. And they've defined their position in the market and there's a clear path going forward. And sometimes you see both growth capital and what they call secondaries exiting some of the initial investors. It comes as a combination, right, to make deals happen. So I saw being in private equity, which was really interesting. I was maybe around 25 at the time. So it was 25, then 26 I did Uber, then 27 I did, I left and I did Washmen. So there was a little bit of a transition before Washmen between my private equity and.
So you began your career in the world of high stakes investment banking, and then you moved to Uber. What was that thing that made you think I wanted to launch a laundry app?
So I think I would go back a bit more back into my private equity. The development into becoming an entrepreneur really clicked with me during my private equity years. Initially, it was like, okay, I'm going to make a lot of money here being an employee. I'm going to save my bonuses. And when I have enough money, I'll be able to start my own business, right? This is kind of the classic way of thinking about it. Didn't really think, and it's surprising being, investment banking and private equity, you think that this kind of, raising money is for the more mature businesses, for, family businesses that have done well and they need some new restructuring. But during that time, another executive director came by and said, hey, my fiance is raising money for a startup. How about you come and see the pitch? And this is, we're talking in 2013.
Was it like the first startup that you took a look at?
Exactly. Yeah. So in 2013, so we went to his house, a couple of bankers there, all friends, and she was pitching the idea. Ex-Google person. She wants to do an e-commerce business in Africa, which sounded really interesting. And at the end of the presentation, she's like, okay, I'm going to talk about valuation and I'm going to talk about, what the investors will get out of this versus what the sweat equity is for the founders. And she's like, yeah, basically you guys fund it. I'll give you 20% and 80% comes to us. So I put my hand up. I'm like, and how much money are you putting? She's like, zero. Right? She kind of knew the formula. She was coming from the outside. I was like, really? You could do that? I'm like, this doesn't make sense. and then it kind of clicked, right? If you're a strong founder, you have a good idea, you have a good foundation, from your career, you're able to bring in friends and family into a group and sell them on the idea. You can potentially do the same.
Wow, so an investment banker looking at a pitch from someone else gets a light bulb moment
Yeah.
and says, hey, I can actually do this and keep most of the equity.
Exactly. So that got me really thinking, and I'm like, okay, we're talking about very soon. I'm going to do something new, but I need the idea. So I had the idea while I was in private equity, and I approached a friend. She's like, listen, one of my other friends, she's just starting off at Uber. She's like employee number 3. And she's also really smart, ex-Harvard, and she's moving into Uber, which I didn't even know what Uber was at the time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I'd love to meet her. So I met her in that meeting. The purpose of the meeting was to poach her to leave Uber to come and potentially think about this idea.
And did you have the idea already at the time?
I had the idea. The idea was cooking in for a bit.
Yeah, okay.
There was another startup called Laundry Box that was doing it, but I thought I could do it in a much better way, right? So I met with her. I told her the idea. She's like, it's a pretty cool idea. How about you park it aside for now, leave your private equity investment banking world and join us at Uber. We're hiring, we're giving equity and all of that. So I was like, you know what? I'm down for that. 3 days later, I got an offer. And I was also one of the first early employees at Uber. Joined them in early 2014.
She ended up poaching you.
She ended up poaching me in the meeting, exactly. Did that for a year. Then I saw the power of equity and the growth of equity.
Do you get ESOPs at Uber?
Exactly. You get some shares. And, my shares, because I came in earlier than the other guys, I started seeing them. If I stay here for a couple of years, I'm going to make $1 million out of this, right?
Yeah.
And I saw that the guys who came in even before me, let's say 1 year, they're sitting on a couple of $1 million.
Wow.
And the guy who came in even earlier, he's sitting on like $20-30 million.
There's something I saw the other day about NVIDIA. They're like half of their employees now have $1 million plus in ESOPs and equity.
Yeah. So equity is a real motivator, right? So when I was at Uber, actually, before even jumping into my original idea, I was trying to interview with companies in the US. I was able to work there at the time, and that are going to potentially become unicorns, but are still at the early stage. So I was saying to myself, I don't necessarily need to start my own business. Maybe I need to find someone really smart, try and tag along with him, and get my equity that way. And very interesting, I reached out to someone called Tony Zhu on Angel List. And he reached out back to me and he said, we're doing this food startup and we're in San Jose and we're going to San Francisco and meet people in San Francisco. So I said, okay, I'm happy to join. And it was a general manager role, which was quite interesting.
So you were full-time at Uber looking at startups?
Yeah. And evaluating whether I create my own startup.
Okay.
So when I talked to Tony Zhu, we had multiple meetings back and forth. He's like, we just came out of YC. And then I was really hoping that I would land that job because I believed in the team. I believed in the founder.
So you want to join the startup as an employee?
As an employee, but the first to say, first 10.
Yeah. So you get the higher equity that you didn't get at Uber, for example.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that didn't work out. They said, hey, listen, we needed to plug in someone very quickly, but we're opening up Boston very soon. Keep in touch. We really liked you and come back in a month. I don't know what happened. I got distracted. I'm like, let's go back to creating my own startup. Funny, I say that, I share the story because who is Tony Zhu? He's the founder of DoorDash. And today you're talking about, I don't know, $50 to $100 billion company. So if they gave me, let's say $50,000 or $100,000 at that, and the equity value, I mean, the company was worth 40 million. Wow. They were talking to me about, at the time, 40 million. You can have seen, how rewarding the equity could have been, right? I don't know.
What did you learn from that interaction with Tony?
I learned the value of equity, right? And starting really young, starting really early, and it's not all about the salary and your annual bonuses and all that. If you're working on something big and you really believe in it, right, and you approach it also as an investor, right? When I pick Tony, I'm also using my private equity kind of like cap,
right,
to evaluate, is this something that's going to be massive?
So not many people wake up thinking that the laundry business is broken. What was it that you saw?
well, I was a banker, and being in private equity and all of that, I had a lot of suits. I was working very long hours. I never had cash on me. I didn't even have time to go to the ATM machine. It was in my way from work to the office. And I would always have this guy come to my house, WhatsApp guy, we call him. I come and pick up my laundry, he picks it up. And then when he brings it back, I'm not at home. I'm always delayed. It wasn't a smooth process. And then when I try and pay him, I'll be like, next time and next time and next
exactly,
time.
credit.
And then whatever bill he gave me, there's no way I can audit that. So I just give him whatever, right?
Exactly.
And then if something goes wrong, something gets damaged, it was really a nightmare to try and resolve that. So I saw that in the UAE, that laundry at-home delivery service was quite strong, the need for it there. People don't necessarily go out of their way to pick up their laundry from their home and take it to the shop. And I thought, given that it's highly fragmented, there's an opportunity to digitize this, create an excellent user experience, and ultimately go into the supply chain and become an expert at really delivering an excellent, laundry quality to extend the longevity of your clothes, for instance, or minimize those damages on those frustrating experiences.
Right. So from a small idea to a fully fledged running business, how did you bring it to life?
So I was at Uber at the time. It was a perfect timing because I invested 1 year, so I got a bit of the ESOP that was offered to me. I had a manager that gave me a really bad review, which I thought was really unfair. I think at the time I was also someone difficult to manage. I was highly ambitious, right? I was kind of dogmatic in the way I thought of things. It was kind of my way or it's my way or the highway kind of thing.
You don't even want to say it,
right? So
like it is, entrepreneurs are like that.
I'm naive too at the age, right? And I really believed in myself. So
can you blame someone
for
that?
One of my friends actually wanted to invest in me, and then he wanted to get the feedback. So he managed to get the feedback from the network who heard. Yeah. Basically, the manager said about me is like, yeah, Rami's really full of it. Okay. And the guy came back to me laughing. He's like, and I look back at it today, I think you require that naivety and you have to have that really strong self-confidence to be able to take that leap, right? When you're giving away equity from Uber, potentially worth, let's say $750 million, and if the thing goes up to 2-3 million, it's a big decision.
So you put it all on the side and said, I'll do Washmen.
Exactly. And working at Uber gave me the confidence because, coming in from the world of banking and looking at models and just trying to understand the business from presentations and high level to actually being an operator on the ground where you're rolling up your sleeves and doing the actual operations with the power of technology. So I think what Uber had more than the app was the data behind what was available to the operations managers to be able to download that data, be able to dissect it, come up with some models, incentivize the drivers to hit certain KPIs to move the needle forward every week, as opposed to being in, say, the private equity world where you're waiting for management accounts every quarter, right? And then you take a decision.
It's definitely more dynamic and interesting in the sense like you have updates much faster.
Exactly.
As a founder.
So you're changing strategies, is very versatile. And technology really helped that. And then I saw, the way of working, the culture of working, hacking things together, working on Google Sheets.
How did you put it together? How did you get with your co-founder, and how did this business actually start?
Yeah. So once I said, okay, you know what, I'm done working for anyone, and it's time to take matters in my own hands.
Yeah. And
if I'm going to fail, I don't want someone to be the influence of that. I fail because it's my mistake, right? Or it's my issues. I want to blame myself as opposed to not accepting someone else's approach towards my performance. So I picked up the phone and I called one of my best friends from university. We grew up in Saudi together, and I knew him from high school. We went to Montreal together. We lived together in university. He's one of the smartest people I knew, and I needed someone who's going to really understand this business inside out and become the expert in this field in the next couple of years. And I know Jad, he's a sponge for information. So any topic you talk to him about, if he puts his mind into it, he will know it in a lot of depth with very strong retention of information. He reads an article,
learner that's interested.
Very quick learner, high retention of information in the right details. And for us to be able to crack this problem, I can do it as well because I also come from an operational background, but I can focus more on, let's say, the growth side, the fundraising aspect, which is a real challenge in the early days, right?
Exactly.
And I thought someone better than me or smarter than me, let's say, on the operational side, is going to be able to complement me quite well with other areas that I'm quite strong at.
Right.
So I called him, told him the idea. He was working at Schlumberger in Canada, oil field services, wireline. Anyone who's in oil fields, wireline is like the A team. That's smartest people work in that, and in a time where the industry was going down and they were firing people, he was actually getting promoted, right?
At Schlumberger.
So he got a move to the US and he said, do I move to the US from Canada, or do I go do an MBA, or do I join Rami at a startup?
All right.
And he left his business, his job at Schlumberger, and he said, I'll take the leap and move to Dubai and start this out. He parked his car in Schlumberger's offices, thinking that he might come back sometime to pick it up and get it sold and whatever. And it was
like
kind
literally.
Literally, and he's trying to figure out if this is going to work out or not. He had a return ticket as well and all of that.
Yeah.
And by the time he got into the weeds of it,
you got him to digital.
and we got the funding faster than we expected and everything.
Yeah.
I think that car is in the junkyard right now. And they kept calling him, you need to come and pick it up. You need to come and pick it up. And at the end, he never actually went back to it.
Funding is a really interesting topic. A lot of people are stuck because they think they don't have the funding. How did you figure out your funding?
So initially, we thought it was a good idea to join one of the accelerators. And accelerators was a new thing that was happening back in 2015 when we first started. So I applied to Flat 6 Labs. And it was funny, actually. The person who poached me to go into Uber was also at Flat 6 Labs before she joined Uber. Nice. So she had a bit of startup experience, had a good relationship there. And after a year, and I told her I'm out, and she was also leaving to start something new. She said, reach out to Flat 6 Labs. I know them very well, and I can give a good recommendation, given that I've worked with you for a year. So I applied to the program. I got accepted quite fast. They actually started the program, and they kind of fit me in, type of thing.
Cool.
Jad came on board 2 weeks later, and we prepared trying to cook the whole business model, right, and get something that we can present to investors. And in the accelerator program, you always work towards, after 2 months or 3 months, there's something called a demo day, where you're in a room and you present the idea to investors.
Right.
So we did that. We presented the idea to investors. And I also went out to my network of friends and family, people I used to work with and all of that. And I pitched the idea and I explained to them. Some of them have never invested in a startup. They also had that challenge. How do you give up 20% and you're not putting any money into it and all that?
Exactly. It's a very counterintuitive thing, right?
Yeah.
You need to explain the whole...
So you need to educate as well. And explain and show them the upside and all of that. So within, I would say, from demo day, we were the fastest company out of all the accelerators that Flat 6 Labs ran in the MENA region to be able to close the required funds, which was around $400,000.
Wow! So you
as
raised
a seed.
As a seed, $400,000.
Yeah.
How many days?
Pre-revenue, pre-product, pre-everything.
Just on the idea and the founders.
Exactly, and I think there was a strong founder fit. In terms of like preparing the numbers and understanding the business. Financial modeling, all of that. I think that we presented something quite strong, as well as the experience at Uber had a strong name, saying basically Rami is going to create the Uber for laundry, right?
So Rami, you started Washmen as an asset-light service, and then in 2018 you guys took a massive leap and decided to start owning your facilities. What were the early signs that decision was paying off?
So the idea of going asset light also has to do with fundraising, because it's very difficult for me to come and say I need a couple $1 million and I'll probably dilute a lot of money, right, earlier on to do that. And if you build a very large scale facility and you don't have the demand, you're going to be burning a lot of cash until it starts making sense when you cover your fixed costs. So the approach was, let's kind of get the proof of concept. Let's get the product to market fits, see the market need, right, from a home delivery aspect, giving them a digital experience. And we did that quite well. And we were quite efficient. A lot of the early days, the technology was focused on how do we set the right expectation on pickups and delivery timings for customers, right? And obviously other experiences where if there's a mistake or an issue, we can funnel it digitally.
So you're saying basically you raised $400,000. You wanted to do the startup. You thought, why buy a facility? Why not do an app, help solve the problem that you had earlier, which was delivery time,
Exactly.
pickup, drop off, and then decide where you needed to plug in more money. By then you'd have something running and then raise more money to.
Exactly. So I use the existing supply and the quality that exists already in the market. And given that I'm the only one in this space, and what was important is to give slightly or a bit more of a better experience than what's in the market.
Exactly.
And the app experience was enough to get people to latch on to the service, right? As we started scaling and adding on more laundries, we started seeing the complications of being able to manage quality at scale. And Marina would have laundry B, downtown would have laundry A, for instance, and different experiences for different customers based on the geofences that they lived in. So we said, to really scale this forward, right? And complexities are very high in the laundry industry, especially as you scale. We really need to create a centralized operations, like a central kitchen. This was actually before the world of Kitopi came around, right?
Kitopi, the guys that bought us out.
Yes. So we kind of had the same mentality.
It's like a central kitchen for washing.
For washing and laundry and all of that. And then from that, we'll be able to feed through our logistics, Dubai and Abu Dhabi. And that's now situated near Expo.
So you have
Dubai.
one facility there?
We have 3 facilities. They're all quite close to each other. We have a total of around 45,000 square feet of space.
Wow. And how many different laundries are you dealing with?
Today, we brought everything in-house. So there's nothing that we outsource. The only thing we actually outsource is carpets. It's a small volume, but this is something that we can also consider bringing in-house or acquiring one of the suppliers that we like to.
But if a random laundry wants to be part of your service, there's no way for them to join you?
No.
Okay.
So we're a direct competitor to any laundry service, whether it's online or offline.
If there's 100% of the laundry market in the UAE between the shops that do the stuff on the side or the guys who have a central kitchen, what percentage would you say you take of the total market as Washmen?
It's very difficult to say, to be honest, because I think Washmen is not just about acquiring market share. It's also about growing the market itself. So we're at a size that we're significantly larger than any number 2 by multiples.
Wow.
And we're becoming, let's say, the trendsetters into the space, which is inviting more people into the laundry market. So for instance, back in the day, you would use laundry to do just your suits or, your formal wear, right? And everything else you do at home. But at Washmen, for instance, we introduced something called the wash and fold bag, which is a bag, you fill it up, as much as you can. It's, you can fit up to maybe 15 kilos worth 3 laundry loads that you would do at a home. And for a set price, we will wash, dry, and fold
everything
in that bag. For right now, it's like around 75 dirhams, right?
Yeah.
So that's that grows the market because now you can actually do your underwear, you can do your gym clothes, you can do your pajamas, along with your formal stuff, right? So the Washman's average bill is significantly higher, even from the other premium laundries, because of the offering that we have, where people don't just send 2-3 items, on the weekly.
Everything.
They send quite a bit, right? Our average number of items is close to 40 on an order, which is unseen, let's say, in the laundry industry here.
That's a great statistic. We love hearing about bold decisions, but what is the most unconventional decision that you took that had a massive impact on your business?
To me, it doesn't seem unconventional because it's kind of the DNA of the business. To the industry, it is unconventional, which is basically investing a lot of money from day one into the tech and building tech to build that experience and build that app, right? And from the industry, the way they looked at it was like, why do you need to spend so much money and hire so many people to build this tech? I can just, go out and buy this white label tech that will accept orders from customers, and it's like a very basic system, right?
Exactly.
I call those fax machines, right? It's like buying a fax machine. Doesn't mean that you bought a fax machine and you're getting orders to the fax machine. It's going to boom. You need something much more complex, much more integrated into your supply chain that evolves with the customer's needs, that allows you to capture data from customers to be able to grow your business. So the approach and the big bet on how tech is going to allow us to scale this business to where we are today it was our biggest bet, because at the end of the day, if we didn't manage to grow and we spent so much money on the tech, who's going to really be using this tech? It just goes to the garbage, right?
Exactly.
But it's proprietary tech that's been built in-house, and it's allowing us to fuel the business and increase the barriers to entry for anyone else who's thinking to come into the space, because we have years of knowledge that's translated back into product by solving, micro problems here and there. You're talking about, as an entrepreneur, you're solving thousands of those, right, over the years. And we're translating that back into logic that the tech is able to absorb into algorithms, into new experiences. And that's what gives us the edge. So you mentioned the algorithm, and I think Washmen as a whole is just one big algorithm, right? If you have, let's say, if you want to compete with us, so let's say you have $100 million and you want to replicate Washmen, right? It's very difficult to replicate the algorithm, right? Because the algorithm is built on a lot of these small problems that you can only identify as you grow, right? Today, you're doing 100 orders a day. There's certain problems that comes with that, right? But when you identify those problems, you want to scale it up, right? And solve them for 2,000 orders, for instance, right? And you
get a new set of problems, right?
Exactly. And then you need to also scale. You want to avoid as much as possible trying to solve it for today, and think about how do you solve it for the future. It takes a bit of time. It takes a bit of effort. But eventually, that's how the big algorithm happens. And then when you're at 300 orders, you identify new issues. So if you have a lot of money and you come into the problem, you don't know what you're solving for.
So you're saying you need to start from the beginning so that you solve as you go, and then you build that massive algorithm that becomes very hard to compete with.
Exactly. And then that ultimately, comes back into, operational excellence, amazing customer experience,
and how many people
and the reputation that goes into the market.
Yeah. How many people work at Washmen today?
So today we have over 500 people. I think last time we checked was like 530.
Yeah.
But it's, over the years, it's been growing quite fast.
Nice. And Shoecare is your latest service.
It's not the latest, actually.
No?
So we had Shoecare in 2023.
Okay.
And then the Finery in 2024. So 23 was Shoecare, and then the Finery.
So you took a year of R&D to launch Shoecare. Tell me about that, and where is it now?
So Shoecare was something that we always had in mind, but we understand that it's quite a complex problem. There's renovations, there's repairs, there is cleaning, different materials. So it isn't something that you can just launch, especially at our size. When you launch something, especially the next vertical, there's going to be a lot of trust, given that you've done very well in laundry.
Yeah.
There's going to be a very high expectation on Shoecare.
Exactly.
So there was a lot of, as you said, R&D looking into this, understanding what is the investment required, and more so, what is the skill sets that we need to hire for to bring it in-house.
This is the shoe cleaning and repair?
Yes.
Okay.
So we did that. We launched it in 2023, and from the get-go, it was an instant success. We had, in one of our facilities, in our 30,000 square feet facility, we dedicated small space for Shoecare, and we fitted it out and everything. And then literally within a couple of weeks, we're like, okay, this thing is much, much bigger than we thought.
Wow.
And we got another 10,000 square feet facility next door.
Nice.
To move Shoecare into that.
And can a customer come in and walk and see that, or is it just
no?
in-house?
It's back end operations. The customer experience is mostly digital. We do have one shop in the Meadows. In the Spinneys there. Standalone for pickups and delivery.
Okay.
We do have another shop that's opening up in downtown very soon. And then we have a third shop, actually, that's for the Finery, which is the other kind of big opportunity that we found in the market, which we launched 1 year after Shoecare. Again, doing the diligence and the research on understanding what's required for very expensive high-end items. And we've seen in some markets, like in New York, in London, in Paris, in Jakarta even, that you're able to provide a very premium service at, it's quite expensive.
What was the thing that you found that wasn't working that you wanted to fix with that?
So there's so much you can do in laundry to be able to give quality. We do a very good job, right, in general. But if you send me something that's very expensive, like, I don't know, crocodile skin, right? That needs a lot of attention. It needs a lot of, tests before you actually go the full-fledged cleaning process. And that's where the idea of the Finery came out. So if I take the example of how much time we spend in Washmen versus the Finery, it's about 15 times more attention
to do one product.
To do one item.
The Finery, it's called?
The Finery, yes.
Okay. And it's not a part of Washmen? It's
part of Washmen, but it has its own dedicated team, own dedicated machines, own processes.
So it's like a premium service.
Yes, and it takes much longer to get done.
Would the Kandura be classified as Washmen or?
No, that's more of a day-to-day. So that makes sense to send it to Washmen. But if you have, let's say, a very expensive Vicuña cashmere, let's say, sweater that you spent quite a bit of money on, Laura Piana, 12,000 dirhams, let's say, and you don't wash it that often, but you want to guarantee that nothing wrong will happen, you send it to the Finery. Right? We take our time to make sure that we send it back exactly in the right shape, color, in the condition, almost as new condition. And if anything goes wrong, we have an insurance up to 10,000 dirhams per item in the Finery to give you that comfort.
10,000 per item?
Yeah.
Amazing.
And we paid it out. We've had a couple of cases.
Yeah. Tell us the most interesting case.
We had an Hermes jacket that came in that got damaged in the cleaning process. And we paid the customer. I think it was 14,000 dirhams.
You paid 14,000?
We went above and beyond even the 10. And then we went to Hermes and we showed them that, hey, listen, because in the facility we have 150 cameras. And we were able to detail exactly what was done, which programs we used. And we showed that to Hermes, and Hermes actually gave us the credit back.
Nice.
But we paid the customer before finding out about the credit. So you take care of the customer experience, and then you go out and you do the extra stuff. So that was interesting.
So Rami, thank you so much so far. It's time for the laundry list. What it is a bunch of rapid fire questions, and you need to clean the laundry up with one sentence or one word.
Okay. Do you use also laundry with other people, or it's just because of me?
Just because of you.
Okay, great.
We have these questions specifically just for you. What's the biggest stain in your career? How did you clean it up?
I think at Washmen, when we first started, we kind of didn't know what we were doing. We were so focused on the delivery and the logistics part and the experience. And when we actually got the first couple of orders, one customer sent in quite a few items that were very expensive, and we literally damaged all of it in the first week. So I had to go to the customer's house. Me and Jad were dressed in Washmen uniform, right? We're presenting. And we stood there. She was crying. Her husband was standing there trying to, calm the situation. And I was looking at myself. I'm like, I left my banking and my equity at Uber and all of that, and I literally don't know what I'm doing. So I think that one had its deep trauma in us, where we decided that we really want to perfect how we do things. So we never end up in that situation.
Yeah,
again.
Exactly. What's one piece of dirty laundry no one knows about Washmen?
Dirty laundry that we received?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that's very embarrassing. Okay, I've shared this with before, and my PR is please don't share it again. So I'm not going to share that one. Well, I'll give you a clue. Okay. We're lucky to be in Dubai, and every bathroom has a shattaf. So let's use them.
Okay, what's a favorite app that you use besides Washmen?
Favorite app? Honestly, I think InstaShop is fantastic.
InstaShop?
Yeah. Now it's a bit competitive. There's a couple of players out there here and there. But in the early days, they were just amazing.
They crushed it.
Yeah. The business model is beautiful. They managed to not go into the supply chain earlier on and managed to get the operators to really deliver on the promise. And it was fast and it was quick. So those guys, I'm very impressed with the founder, and I'm very impressed with the business model.
Oh, I hope the founder gets to hear this directly from you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great... So do you fold or roll your clothes?
I fold. Yeah.
Okay. What's one piece of advice you have for someone stuck in the rinse and repeat cycle of their career?
I can speak for myself. So I was kind of seeing that I would be in that, washing machine, let's say. And I was scared of it, right? Because eventually I didn't want to be dependent on a job, and I wanted to break out from that and be in control of my life, right? So one big aspect, especially coming from investment banking and private equity and leaving that and moving into Uber, is that you're being paid a lot of money to stay in your job, and it just increases year on year, right? And that creates a certain lifestyle that you're getting used to. You start creating a comfort zone that becomes very expensive for you to get out of, right? So if you want to jump into something new and you want to take on the risk, you need to kind of look back at what are the small things in life that you need to give up on. They could be material, they could be, your time, right? And especially the financial aspect. And if you're ready to do that, without taking on too much risk, I'm not asking you to save up your money to start your business. We've talked about that.
Yeah.
So save up a bit of money to be able to downscale a lot of things that you have. You have a couple of very difficult years ahead, right?
Right.
And I think on the personal side, if you're able to do that, that will also translate quite nicely in your business, being very resource careful and all of that. And that's what I would say to a lot of people, right? Some people come to me like, I want to start a startup. I'm like, dude, you're flying to Saint-Tropez and Ibiza every year, and you're chilling with
some take a big hit to your lifestyle.
Billionaires, and I don't know what's. You need to take a big hit, right? And this is the sacrifice. What's interesting is also having financial comfort. Think about when you're picking a partner, right? You need to have a partner that also is aligned on that, right? And if they've had a great career and they've saved quite a bit of money, that works. But if you have a partner who's paycheck to paycheck, they can't be out of a salary or R&Ding for the next 6 months, right?
Your partner needs to be aligned. You're saying not
uncomfortable.
Uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So if you're comfortable, would it work if one was a millionaire and so you were a millionaire and I was not, for example? One to a startup. The dirham for me is like a million for you.
I don't think so. I think being a little aligned and why you're seeing now a lot of really smart people being able to take more risk today is you're having exits like Kareem, for instance. Take Kareem as an example. You've had so many employees, they've exited. There's a couple of millionaires in dollar terms that came out of that, right? And they're able to now, take a step back from their careers, from that cash flow. They have kind of like a big cushion to sit on and start thinking a bit more innovatively. And I think that's quite important. We've actually had one employee who was one of the early employees at Kareem, joined Washmen. And then when Kareem exited, while he was at Washmen, he started thinking like that, right? And now today he's actually one of the co-founders at Suppi. Which is the food supply chain management software that's out there. And he's a co-founder himself.
Suppi.
Danny Zain and Bob and Ula.
Okay. Kareem guys.
Yes.
Never thought about it.
Every month on month.
Right.
When I gave it to VCs who don't understand our space and they're looking at SaaS businesses and stuff, obviously we don't have the same retention as SaaS, right? And they would look at that and they'd be like, no, these are really bad retentions. But when you give it to someone who understands,
who's in the space,
can benchmark it,
right?
And he came to me and be like, these are really good retention numbers, right? That was really refreshing to hear.
Right.
So we got the right investor on board from the beginning. He wanted to put in some terms, like I said, that could have been difficult for us to move forward with as a business and as entrepreneurs. I said no to that. And then that investor was quite strong that, every time we needed money, we could go back to him and he would fund, it was $1 million first time, another $1 million and a third $1 million. Be like, guys, heads down. I'll increase the valuation. I'll give you another $1 million. I want you to focus on getting better traction. And he led us on to our Series B. Right?
So he accepted the terms that you wanted eventually?
Exactly.
Okay.
And he refunded multiple times.
Amazing.
It's a VC out of Russia. They refunded multiple times until they led us and helped us to get to the position of being able to raise a successful Series B. So the total funding of the business was around $11 million. And I think every stage got easier and easier because, you have more track records, you have more growth, you have more data, you have more experience, you're able to rejig the future and the vision to something that aligns more with what bigger investors would want.
And what is the current valuation of your company?
Can't really say it, but the valuation is being judged right now on an EBITDA basis and earnings. We're looking really at cash flows. The business has reached a level where it generates a good level of cash flow. It's a respectable level,
all right.
Which is not, we're not abusing our customers, obviously, but at the same time, these are margins are acceptable. And we're looking at the growth, obviously, going forward. So you're looking at the margins of what we call the EBITDA margins, for non-finance people, it's the profit margins, let's call it, and the cash flow generation around that, as well as the growth. And taking these two things into account, right? Obviously, the last 1-2 years, being a good indicator of the next 1-2 years.
Right, you guys started paying dividends recently.
Yes, and now we're paying dividends. So when investors look at it, they're saying it's a high growth business. We're growing. Our growth in the last 4 years has been year on year 38-40%. Right.
Impressive.
Actually, this year we did 38% year on year. Our bottom line is growing much faster because a lot of our fixed costs are being covered.
Right.
And we have the ability to continue the growth and pay out dividends to our investors. So another investor from the outside would like that story. He'd be like, you know what, we're going to be paying even more dividends because of this growth.
Maybe one of those private
And we can
equity
benefit
guys
from
that
it
you
today.
worked with in the beginning, right?
What is that?
Private equity style investors.
Yes. So
Once you get-
now we're at the stage where it makes a lot of sense for private equities, right? There's still a lot of room for growth for them to consider potential exits down the road.
Right.
The company doesn't have any debt. So if there's any sort of financial engineering or restructuring the corporate finance of the business, there's always value in that. We're at a position where if we want to think of M&A, buy out smaller players, a very good, let's call it offline player, we could do that through raising debt or using the internal cash flows of the
Exactly,
business.
because you don't have any debt and you have the ability to raise money. You're such a
Exactly.
strong position, and you're the market leader in your space.
Yeah.
Really well done, Rami. I knew about Washmen, but I didn't know about your story and how you did. So you worked at Morgan Stanley, and then you moved to Uber, and now you did Washmen.
Morgan Stanley, then Sweetcorp, then Uber.
Right.
Yeah.
And what would you say now is the toughest decision you had to make ever?
I think the biggest decision was probably, in my career, it was probably to leave private equity, which is, when I was in banking, I'm like, I don't like this work. I want to do something that's a bit more value creation. And private equity has that. And I had a good trajectory. I felt that I could be good at it. It gave me quite a bit of satisfaction on being an entrepreneur, working with entrepreneurs. But then when the opportunity to join Uber came, it was a real tangent, right? And that was difficult. And I had 3 days really to decide, and I took it. I think it was a good decision. I think it was an amazing decision because it allowed me to step into the entrepreneurship world, get some equity, value equity, understand that, do a bit of research on what I want to do going forward. And it was an excellent stepping stone.
Excellent. They say failure is a teacher, and failure usually hits hard. What was the biggest failure you had?
I think it'll go back to maybe university. For my first year university, let's call it, I didn't do well at all. It was a bit of a cultural shock moving from this region to Canada, being on my own, being in a program just to satisfy parents, let's say. And I didn't know what I was doing. I wasn't motivated for whatever I was studying for. I think that was probably, the biggest kind of like life slap. There was a few things that happened during those times. And I think there was a 1 year, it was in 2007, between my first year and my second year, where there was a hard slap in life that came across, woke me up.
What was
And
it?
that's,
What happened?
that is, there's some personal traumas, I would say, as well as, not doing well in university. And I started realizing, I'm like, okay, I'm seeing my friends beginning to excel and I'm not. And I really feel that year was the year of maturity where I flipped.
But look, you didn't just joke, because university in itself, understanding, the whole credits and how things work, but that's tough in itself. But you also had to move countries, actually continents, right? You go into Canada,
the cold as well, and
exactly,
the sun going down at 3 p.m. It's very difficult.
Yeah,
for some people. I found a challenge. I think also the lack of maturity at that age,
and then,
but sometimes it's a switch, right?
Yeah.
And I think I felt it in that year.
You needed to man up.
Yeah, basically.
Of course. In every, there's no other, there's no way someone could explain that experience to you in a book and you take it from a book. You'd have to, fold your own clothes, learn how it is to be away from home. I think, there's nothing that can prepare you for that kind of a life lesson. We live in a very fast-paced world where things happen a lot. And how do you keep your team motivated? How do you stay in touch with your team and all the decisions that happen?
So when you first start off, you don't really have teams, right? It's really, you're multi-departments. I'm doing customer service, I'm doing PRO stuff, I'm doing fundraising, and doing the actual accounting, all of that, right?
Yeah.
As you grow and as the business proves itself and you have more funding and you're actually beginning to make money, you're able to bring back and invest into building departments. And today, having more than 500 people in the business, we have multiple departments, we have department heads, we have a very strong middle management, and moving from a founder-dependent business to a business that's more institutionalized and runs without, the day-to-day decision-making of founders is a work in itself. We've spent, I would say, quite a bit post-COVID focusing on how do we bring people within the company, and we've done this, from the driver level to operational manager levels. There were drivers in other operations and doing stuff that they didn't imagine that they would do in their career. We've had stories of customer service person wanted to self-learn how to become a data analyst, and today he is our data analyst in the business.
Wow,
he's done a great
job. What is
the
greatest story you have of someone that wanted to excel in your company and you guys had?
We have multiple, right? I can't single it out. We had an engineer who came in at a very low salary, right, where he was paid in the market. We saw the talent. We gave him multiple promotions, and today, mashallah, he's doing super well in his career, right? So I love to see those stories. I've had those stories also at Uber myself, right? So I've identified certain talents. Literally, someone who was a driver that came in, and I'm like, I saw something in his eyes. I'm like, you're not a driver. Today, he became an operations manager at Uber.
Oh wow!
From being a driver. So I like these stories, and that's something that I also see with my dad. My dad, as he moved to say companies and become an entrepreneur, there were certain key men that stuck around with him, and he kept bringing them, and I've seen their lives,
so if
drastically
you pull up
change.
The people around you, you're saying you can
grab. I like to bring people up with me, right? As I succeed, certain people they succeed. So those are I would say in the earlier years, and naturally we foster that within the company. But still, the founders are involved in day-to-day strategic decisions that are more medium, long-term, and being able to keep the vision aligned with that management, right? Sometimes, we have that difficulty, and we do have it. I'm not going to say it's perfectly aligned, where management doesn't understand exactly what is the goal, right? Short-term goal, medium-term, long-term goals, and you need to always bring that back. So those are, I would say, the kind of the day-to-day.
So the main job of the founder, you'd say, is to communicate that vision to his team and make sure that they all get it.
And communicate it on the daily, on the weekly, realigning people back into the objectives of the business, measuring those objectives, and showing them that the decisions that we're taking and the work that you're doing is translating into actual results.
Very interesting. The other day I see a Washman car, right? We had the rains. Remember when everything got flooded a while ago? I go to the place here called Fields to get my coffee. And I drive to Fields and I see, I'm like in almost half the car in the water. And I see in front of me a Washman car.
Yeah, it's underwater.
But the Washman car is like parked there, like an ad, like a van. And I'm like, that's pretty smart. Like everyone's gonna need to,
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm like, that's pretty.
I don't know
smart.
if that was by chance or someone actually thought of it.
Maybe it was stuck in the water. Maybe it was there as an ad. I don't know. But when I saw it, I'm like, that's so interesting because I got a lot of stuff to clean as well. It's raining everywhere. But I don't know if it was on purpose or not.
I don't know. I went on Emirates auction like 2 weeks ago, and I saw that 7 vans that we lost. They're all in there because we give it back to Al Tayar, and then they sell it as scrap.
But why do you, after using it, you have like a lease?
No, we have everything leased, and if it gets damaged, we have the insurance. برميها عليهم and then give me a new car.
Okay.
So that's the benefit of leasing cars as opposed to owning them, because you don't want to deal with this stuff.
Salvage value.
Yeah, صعبة. And today we have like 75, 80 cars or something. So vans. So
you're in DIP or where?
We have a facility in DIP, mostly Jabal Ali industrial area.
Okay.
We have 2 warehouses there and 1 in DIP.
Warehouses? You took them or you put the warehouse?
No, we rent the warehouse and we obviously fitted out the factory inside.
Okay.
Yeah. Also Sheikh Ahmed was the big one, was with Sheikh Ahmed bin Rashid.
The UAE has become a thriving and growing startup ecosystem. What is one thing that you think entrepreneurs get wrong?
So let's say, if you're an outsider looking into the UAE and coming in, you see the glam and you see all of that, right? But at the end of the day, it's not easy money, right? You're not going to come in and investors are going to give you money right away because of whatever reason. And the markets is also not as big, let's say, as, for instance, New York, right? Which is in a bigger country, right? So you sometimes forget that in the UAE, you have Dubai and Abu Dhabi being very, really big international hubs,
Yeah.
but it's kind of like limited to that. It's not like it gives you real access to a much big, in my opinion, to a much bigger, let's say, geography that's kind of integrated. So why I say that is, if you operate in the UAE and you want to do business also in Saudi, these are two different jurisdictions with different regulatory environments, right?
Right.
And it's not a home run that if you succeeded in the UAE, that you're going to succeed in Saudi, right?
But would you say the UAE is like a launch pad for the remaining countries in the Middle East?
It could be, and we've seen examples for sure, but it's not that obvious, right? So example for us, the product to market fit is very strong here in the UAE. Dubai, Abu Dhabi, we're doing fantastic, but we find it very challenging from a demographics perspective, let's say, to be able to operate the same way in Riyadh.
Why is that?
Sensitivity, price sensitivity, expats, demographics is different than.
So 75% of Saudis are nationals. You said they do their washing at home then?
They have old habits, let's say. Even here, to be honest with you, like for instance, with the local community, we're not that strong. Right. So they have, let's say, the maids at home, they have their own systems. Some people don't want to wash outside of the home, they want to wash inside of the home, right? Saudi has a lot of that, right? Where we thrive is with the expats, right? Where they have a lot of different items of clothing that require dry cleaning and require extra care. They live in smaller spaces. They don't have the space to be able to dry their clothes at home, all that kind of stuff. So our model in Dubai and Abu Dhabi is a bit more of the international, cosmopolitan type of city, whereas in Riyadh, I don't think it's similar.
And for Washmen, what is the future now? Do you see? Is there other countries that you have planned, or do you have more growth here in the UAE? What is?
I think there's a lot of growth still in the UAE here, right? So we're doing quite a bit in sales per month from relatively what we think is not that many customers. So we see multiples on just staying and focused here in the UAE, right? And from a business, from a financial perspective, it could be really rewarding if you keep the focus here and you go after the growth that we believe in. And we're seeing it year on year. You're growing 40%
look at the roads.
year on year.
They're so busy. And Dubai has a plan to double the population, right?
Of course.
I think you can't go wrong with.
And it's not just double, right? It's also certain pockets, let's say, that can. The target audience for Washmen is probably growing much faster than double.
Because they're all expats. It's not, the nationals are not going to double up in a year. That's impossible. If you think we're 10% of the population, and
within the expats, there's certain groups that we're seeing that are growing fast, much faster. Right.
Very interesting.
So that's where a lot of the growth could come in.
Okay, Rami, this has been incredible. Thank you for sharing your journey and your great experiences with everyone here. For all our BXB listeners that have tuned in today, you have to try out Washmen. I think it's a quality service, and Rami's a genius entrepreneur. Looking forward to seeing you guys on the next episode.